Okay folks, we're going to kick this off. We're on time. Thanks for coming along to this session, SQL Server automation using BIML. My name's Simon Peck. I run a small BI and data consultancy based out of Christchurch. We specialise in SQL Server, Azure, Cortana Analytics. We're doing just getting into a bit of IoT sort of streaming at the moment, and of course the subject for this session, automation with BIML. I first come across this structured query language in 1990 when I was on one of the first full-time computer science courses run at what is now the ARA Institute down in Christchurch. I've been working with SQL Server now for nearly 20 years in some form or another. My BIML addiction started, I remember it quite clearly, it started a few years back. I was presenting at a SQL Saturday, and the presentation was about integration services scripting, the number 8 fencing wire of integration services. And part of that presentation I was showing a pattern, a bit of an edge case really, but a pattern where I was using .NET scripting to read the metadata of an Excel file and use that metadata with integration services scripting to be able to load the data from that Excel file into some tables downstream. In the audience that day was the technical director for Verigence, Peter Evenant. After the session he showed me how I could have done exactly the same thing with a lot less fuss and a lot less scripting using BIML. And it was at that point I became hooked. I think I might have been slightly put out that there was potentially an easier and better way to do what I was showing in the presentation. And from that point on, I've been using BIML as much as I could. Last year, I was invited by Verigence to join the first BIML Hero program, which is a Verigence certified BIML expert. The BIML Hero tag doesn't sit particularly well with me, being a shy Kiwi boy. And I went on that course. It's not your run-of-the-mill course. Sure, you have to do a couple of exams, but submitting a code example for a one-on-one peer review with the inventor of a product is slightly more nerve-wracking than doing a live code demonstration in front of 70 or 80 people, I can tell you that. So, automation. According to the great encyclopedia in the sky, automation is about time saving, labour saving. I'm not going to read that, it's a little bit wordy for me. I prefer to think of automation as 3 things: faster, cheaper and better. Now, faster and cheaper are kind of self-explanatory and go hand in hand. Today I want to focus a little bit more on the better. And don't get me wrong, I like faster and cheaper. Clients seem to like it. But today I really want to concentrate on the better bit. So the key message I want you guys to take out of the session today is better with BIML. So why is BIML better than sort of traditional hand coding methods, especially when it comes to integration services? Well, it's about adherence to standards, patterns, naming conventions and best practices. It's also about options. When I've got a particular problem, having a toolkit fill up with BIML nuggets and code examples, I've all of a sudden got a lot more options to attack a particular problem that I've got. And so the next part we're going to do is just drop into some BIML basics. So there's 2 things that we need to do here. I need to show you, for those who haven't seen BIML before, we want to have a look at a quick overview, and then we also want to see where can we find BIML. So BIML is a XML dialect to describe business intelligence assets. So if we see here on this slide, the BIML nuggets we've got in front of us describe, just come into here, So this piece here describes this OLEDB source. We've got a derived column transformation here, which is this derived column here. And that's basically what BIML is. It's human readable XML to describe BI assets. So they can be tables, they can be views, they can be integration services packages, they can be analysis services cubes, both multi-dimensional and tabular. Coming out in the next release, we'll also have support for automating Azure Data Factory assets. And there's a new sort of BIML framework coming out as well called BIML Flex, and we'll talk about that in 1 minute. So we'll cut over and we'll do a little bit of a BIML basics demo. Okay, so here's the first piece of BIML. What this is going to do is it's going to create 2 packages. The first package called my first BIML package, and the second package called my second BIML package. And, what all this is going to do is create 2 packages. Each package is going to have 1 data flow in it. That data flow is not going to have anything in it. So I can right click on my basics package, generate SSIS packages, and we can see here the 2 packages have been created. We'll open one of them up, and here's my first data flow, and there's nothing in it. So not too exciting. We'll move on to the next. Next, we need to add our first ingredient to our BIML, which is BIML script. So in this piece of BIML script here, we've got a for loop container written in C#. So the little the bracket with the hash there, that's what's called a code nugget. So the code nugget it's similar to what classic ASP is to HTML. It's going to use a scripting language to then iterate over the BIML and expand that out. So what we're going to see here is, so we've now created 5 packages with our for loop, and we can see in here we've got a condition. We're basically saying if our counter is evenly divisible by 2, so in this loop it's loop 2 and loop 4, we want to create a sequence container, and for the other iterations we won't have that sequence container. So if we open up loop 1 as a simple data flow, and loop 2 is our data flow, which also has our sequence container in it. So we're adding a little bit of logic into the BIML. Next, we need to add in ingredient number 2, which is metadata. So for this example, we've got a connection through, so the top nuggets highlighted is basically creating a connection to the database, to an AdventureWorks database, and in the tables variable we are reading in the DDL. We're reading in the DDL from that database, then we're going to iterate over that DDL, and we're going to create an SSIS package for each table that we're looking at here. So if we just set that running, because that will take and as we're iterating over that table, we can see where we've injected code nuggets in through the code, so we can name each of our packages appropriately. So here we can see the packages have been created. So we've created one called incremental load and table name. So this is each of the tables in my AdventureWorks database here, and each table, each package rather, has just got a simple the most basic SSIS pattern that everyone probably starts out with, which is a truncate table and then a data flow to load the table. Okay, so what's happening here? So if we take our second example where we had the basic for each loop, it's actually going through two compiling phases. So the first phase is compiling the BIML and BIML script into BIML. So our for each loop is being expanded out, and all those BIML assets are being expanded out based on the code. Our second loop, or our second compile, converts that expanded BIML into the assets that we've seen. So in this case, integration services packages. So that's a little primer, some BIML basics. Now, where do we find this BIML? So BIML hides in a few different spots. The two free places where you can get BIML is with these are Virigents have released a freemium version called BIML Express. You can download that from their website. It's a Visual Studio plugin. Also, as a Visual Studio plugin, BIML comes embedded in BIDS Helper. Does any devs here not use BIDS Helper? Or not heard of BIDS Helper? That's good, because BIML's in BIDS Helper, and BIDS Helper is really, really good for developers. There's loads of functionality in it. One of the functionalities is the ability to write BIML. The next place you can find BIML without installing any software is BIML Online. It's in beta at the moment, so it's free. I'm not sure it's going to be free forever. They may start charging a nominal amount of money to use it at some point in the future, but at the moment it's free. If you want to go on, try have a bit of a play around with BIML without having to install anything, go to BIML Online. They're not free versions, so BIDS Helper and BIML Express, I call them the gateway drugs. They sort of get you started with the addiction, and once you've had a bit of a play around with it and you get something moving, then obviously they lead you on to the fully functional IDE, which the current version is called Mist. The next release is going to be rebranded to BIML Studio. We're going to be, the demo that we're going to be doing from now on will be using BIML Studio, which is a new release that we've been testing out over the last few days. Okay, so okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to build a change data capture or CDC pattern. I don't want to go too much into the details of change data capture. There's a couple of really good blog posts out there, one by Matt Mason, Microsoft employee, and another one by Reza Rad, which will explain in more detail about change data capture. Typically with a change data capture pattern, there's two things that we need to do. We need to take an initial load of the table, and then we need to mark the tables for CDC, and then we need to, every time changes, updates and inserts happen to that table, we need to be able to grab those inserts, updates, and be able to do something with them downstream. So the first thing we're going to do, and I'm going to be doing this on AdventureWorks. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to be able to create our tables. So here, similar to the BIML Basics demo, we're going away to the AdventureWorks table. We're getting a list of all the tables, and in here we've got, I'm limiting this to a certain number of schemas, so I'm just creating a list. I could have made that list for any number of the schemas. I've limited it to these 5, and we want to iterate over those. And for each table, we want to be able to create two tables in our target database, an extract table and a staging table. So we're going to iterate over those and create the tables, and in each table we're then going to iterate through and grab the columns. So we've got a small code nugget here, which basically is saying if the column that we're iterating through is the primary key, we want to put an annotation tag on that. So an annotation tag is just it's just a tag that we put against the table against that column within our solution, because we want to be able to do something with that column later. So in this particular pattern, we're taking the columns from each table, but we also want to add in some audit tables into our target solution. So we want to be able to tag those audit tables, and we also want to be able to tag the primary key, because later we want to be able to do some joins using that primary key, and we want to be able to easily identify it. So if we see here, our tables are empty. If I right click over here and convert to live BIML script, so we've got two options. We can convert to live BIML scripts, which creates those tables in memory, or I can execute the BIML script, which persists those tables to disk. There's a bit of a mix of reasons why you potentially want to have live BIML script, and one of the reasons is for inheritance. So we're going to create some tables here. They're going to sit in memory. Downstream from that, we're going to create some packages that are based off those tables. So if anything changes and we're in live BIML script mode, everything downstream updates automatically because it's in memory. So we've got our tables here, 135 tables. What I want to do with those now is deploy those to my target database. So I could build and run these in BIML Studio. That's going to take probably 5 or 6 minutes, which isn't conducive for a demo. So what I can do here is I can right-click these and copy the BIML script and the drop and create DDL that's associated with these tables. I'll create a new query in here and just paste that in. And we're coming against, so I've just got this database here, which is my Ignite CDC target. There's no tables in it, or not yet. If I execute my query, so we now have all our target tables. We've automated the build of our target tables into here. So we can see we've got our CDC status, our audit, our row hash. These are additional columns that aren't in the AdventureWorks database that we've added into our script in order for us to be able to manage, control and audit our change data capture process. So the next thing we want to be able to do is create some packages. So as I said, change data capture is typically a two-step process. First step is go and grab the data that's sitting in the table and initialize that or enable it for change data capture. We are going to load that initial drop directly into our staging environment. So we've got a two-stage environment, an extract environment and a staging environment. We're going to grab the data from the table straight into our stage in step 1. In step 2, any changes from our tables will go into our extract layer, and then we will process those down into our staging layer. So as I explained, in our first example where we grabbed the tables, we were actually reaching out to the database to grab the DDL from the database to iterate to create our tables. This time, we're iterating over the tables that we've already grabbed that are in the live BIML script mode. That way, if anything changes, we can pick that up immediately from our tables area. And I don't want to get too involved in all the BIML here. It is quite involved, but what you can notice as I scroll down is that I've injected the name of the table into various parts of the integration services script. So when that blows out, it will be individually named. So for what we'll do here is, for this is, you can see we've got 140 odd lines of BIML here to produce our first step. And while this is running, it's expanding in the expanded BIML script view, and that is expanding from that 146 lines down to about 8,500 lines of BIML that it's automated out, and then obviously that's going to create the DTSX files afterwards. Now, before, when we were putting the annotation tags next to the primary key and also to the audit columns, here's an example of why we wanted to annotate those particular columns. So here we've got this is for our OLEDB source, and this piece of BIML is creating the select statement for our OLEDB source. And for this particular pattern, I'm creating a row hash. So for all the non-key and non-audit columns, I want to create a hash of the row using the hash bytes function. Can anyone see a potential vulnerability in the piece of code that I've got here? So previously, the hash bytes function has only been able to take 8,000 bytes. And so this is something that happened to a project I was working on about 15 months ago. We had, not this exact pattern, but we had a pattern that was using hash bytes to be able to hash a particular row. And when we moved the solution from a dev environment into the pre-production environment on pre-prod size data, we had a bug, and our bug was some of the tables were that wide and had, you know, like comment fields in it and so on. It blew hash bytes up. So what we were able to do is we were able to change our code. So there's a undocumented stored procedural function in SQL Server that will do an MD5 hash of greater than 8,000 bytes. So we were able to modify this piece of code with a case where the length is greater than 8,000, use this particular function, and where it's not greater than 8,000, use the hash bytes function, because the function is very, very slow, so we didn't want to just use that over everything. So if I was doing that with in a handcrafted solution, and I've got 150 packages, what are you going to do? The answer is probably you're going to fix the packages that failed. You're probably going to then go, let's take the 6 next most likely packages and let's cross that vulnerability off there as well, and then we'll keep going. that's probably what you're going to do. You're not going to spend half an hour on 150 packages to close a vulnerability that probably in most cases isn't going to happen. But with using BIML, we were able to close the vulnerability right off, so we would never have to experience that, because at some point in the future, if those tables changed or the data changed, then the vulnerability is still there. So that was just an example of where automation has made something better than hand coding. So moving on, what I'll do here is we'll convert these to a live BIML script. These stage 1. So here under our packages, we've created our first stage packages, and the second stage is fairly similar. There's a bunch of code here that we don't need to particularly go into. What's interesting here is we've got some variables that we want to use in our package, and for most cases the variables can be the same name in every package, but for our CDC state variable, we want that to be different for every package. So we've injected a code nugget in here. So each package will have a variable called CDC state underscore and then the name of the package. We can also do that, interestingly, it's not part of this demo, you can interestingly also do that for script components. So if I've got a script, and I use this for a pattern that I use quite often for the error row from an OLEB, for instance, destination, and I want to put that into, I want to XMLify the output, the error output. And so that as I'm creating the XML, I'll write a script for that. But the script takes different input columns for every table or for every package. I can create my script and I can write script with BIML script, so it can manipulate my SSIS scripts as well. So we'll just so once that's live, we've now got our full solution. Apart from, well, this is SQL Server 16, so we need to have it in project deployment mode. So we need to have a project, and we need to tell that project which packages are in it. So the last piece of BIML here is our project, and we can see we've got some project parameters in here. We've got our project connections, and the packages that we want to include in our project are all the packages from our root node.packages. So the project gets its objects from the packages get its objects from the tables, and the tables get its objects from the metadata source, which is the AdventureWorks database. Yeah. So if I now convert this, I've now got my package, I've got my project, I can now build and open this in bids. Now, so this is the output, so this is where all the logging's happening. And we can see it's building away there. And now we've got that opened in Visual Studio. So we'll just have a look at a couple of these packages. So this is from our pass one, or our phase one. We're checking to see whether the table's CDC enabled, then we're enabling it. These are integration services CDC components. So this is the initialize task, and then we've got a normal data flow. If we open up another one, you can see all, so once we've compiled and we've opened them in bids, these have got nothing to do with BIML Studio. These are now native standalone integration services packages. Does anyone know how you could tell potentially that these are not handwritten? It's just because they all look exactly the same here. They've all got exactly the same naming conventions. They've got the forms all the same. The expressions are all the same. That's really the only reason that you'd be able to tell this. Now, stage 2. What we can actually do is, if we cut over to our source database, the mighty AdventureWorks, and in our tables, under system tables, when we enable change data capture for a particular table, it will create a system table that will take all the upserts and deletes from that table. Okay, so we can see here I've already got a couple. We've got department, employee department, and employee pay history. I'll come back to my, need to make this a bit wider. Ooh, don't do that. Okay, that's all right. We'll restart that. Can anyone see something a little untoward going on here, apart from Visual Studio crashing out on me? I've just built 60 odd packages, and I've only got 4 tables in my CDC source. Has anyone ever tried to build a data flow where the source table doesn't exist? You can't do it. So how have I managed? Oh, it's come back. Lovely. And I'll just show you that quickly. So if I just grab any of these for where the data flow, where the source table doesn't exist, scroll down into here. It's got a big red X, as I'd expect it to have. And here's my CDC source, and it's got nothing there. I can't preview it because this table doesn't exist. So there's a BIML Studio only feature called offline schemas. So if we'll just have a look at the BIML in this. And because I know what the CDC tables are going to look like, they just look like the normal tables, their base tables, but they've got 4 extra columns to use for log sequence numbers and the update type and so on. So what I can do is I can write a bit of BIML that when BIML's compiling, I can say, go and check my offline schemas and create the metadata for my packages against that offline schema if the source doesn't exist. So it's been able to build out all my packages even though the source doesn't exist. And that's quite important in this case, because when I'm doing something like this and I wanted to use continuous delivery and I want this to build at night, when this is compiling, at compile time, those tables haven't been created yet. So by the time the second tier or the second layer of SSIS packages run, the first ones will have already run and created the CDC packages. So when the second ones go to run and it validates the metadata, they will be there, but they're just not there at build time. So I want to do one more thing on this, which is I want to add I'm going to add a new table to my AdventureWorks source, the AA Ignite Demo Added table. But before I do that, I'm just going to rerun I'm going to close this down. I want to rerun this. And where's my... And the reason why I want to rerun this is I want to show what's actually happening here. So if we can see this line here, we can see, actually if we just highlight, okay, well done. This is calling MS Build to build the solution. So there's two ways you can actually build a BIML Studio solution. One, there's a compiler that comes with BIML Studio called BIML C. The other way you can run it is with MS Build. Now, which is great if you're in a sort of a CI or a CD type scenario where you've got a build server, and pretty much any build server or anything that will run MS Build, you can then automate your compiling, your building, and your deployment. So I want to grab this code here. Copy that. I'm now going to shut down BIML Studio just to be clear and transparent that there's nothing fishy going on here. And I'm going to add a table to my AdventureWorks database. And now I'm going to run the MS Build just from the command prompt. So I run that as administrator, and if this works, if I paste this in here, so we can now see it building using MS Build through the command prompt now. Hopefully we get a... Okay, so it's going through, it's rebuilding all the packages. So my Visual Studio solution that I'd left open on purpose has now been asked that there's new data available. So if I reload all, we can now see at the top here, the table that I added to AdventureWorks has been picked up in that build, and because everything is inherited down from that initial capturing of the DDL from AdventureWorks, my packages and my project, that's all been now compiled and put into this project. Okay.
Is the MS Build stuff part of need MIST, or is that MS Build stuff will do BIML without MIST?
No, because you need some of the binaries, I think, for MIST. So you couldn't build it with BIML Express, for instance. No. Yep. So, just want to talk quickly. So, moving on from that, so you may be able to then understand how we can do some continuous delivery with BIML. So, I'm partnering with a tech company in Christchurch at the moment. I've actually got two projects very similar where we've got metadata that's looked after either by changing tables or changing views or having a spreadsheet. The metadata can live anywhere. So that's updated by a data steward. Then we're scheduling the BIML build. So any changes that it picks up, it's building the BIML. It's creating it's like a shadow database that database is then we can automate a schema compare. We can deploy the schema compare changes to our target table. We can build the integration services packages. We can deploy those packages to the integration services catalog, and then we can run them all hands off. So this will just run nightly, so any changes that are picked up automatically pushed through and updated. So we're going to go to another demo. So this demo is a total fabrication. This didn't happen, but I think it makes for a reasonable demo. So I got a call from Ralph Kimball. Ralph rang me up and said, Simon, I've got my integration services packages from my dimensional modelling book, Microsoft. They're a little bit out of date. They're SQL Server 2008. Can you help me out and upgrade them for me? I said, no problem, Ralph. So what he wanted me to do was he wants me to upgrade them to SQL Server 2016. He wants me to convert them to project deployment mode. He wants me to take out the logging, the custom logging that he had in those SQL Server 2008 packages, because in 2012 onwards, the logging is obviously much improved. And I want you to apply Jamie Thompson's best practice naming conventions to my packages, because I get a lot of stick from people online who's saying you're not using this, and it's a bit of a global standard now, Ralph. Sort your stuff out. So can you help me out here? I said, no problem, Ralph. Give us half an hour. So if I can find my cursor, we'll do that quickly. So what we can do so we've seen today how we've been able to go from BIML and BIML script into integration services. Now we want to reverse it round, because we've got a set of packages that we've already built, or have already been built. We want to import them in and turn them from integration services packages into BIML. So we can do that quite simply here. So with our packages, right click, import packages. And from here we can import from a project, from an IS pack, from a DTX file, or from an integration services catalog. So we want to be able to do this, and these are just native Kimball packages. We want to be able to bring them in through the project. So it's now importing all our packages into here, and now I need to transform them. So the first thing I need to do is I've already transformed it into project deployment, so I just give that a name. Second thing I want to do is remove the logging. So this is an introduction into transformers. Transformers are the secret sauce of BIML. They really are they're a consultant tool where I can use transformers to look into packages and do things with them. So if I've got a junior developer, I'll say to that junior developer, I want you to create the source and whatever logic you need to and the destination, and then I can use transformers to insert row counts, to insert derived columns. So I'm making sure that everything is to my framework, that I want that standard and consistency. So we can go in there and add event handlers. We can do things. So BIML looks into a package. It can read what's already in there. It can break a data flow, insert something else, and hook it all back up. So the first transformer we're going to look at is the easiest transformer, most basic one in the world. It's basically looking for a target type of log event, and then it's going in and replacing all the logging with nothing, which is basically doing a delete. So if I execute the transformer, all those log events, gone. Next thing I want to do, and we won't dive too much into this code, this is now, this transformer is running on task base, so that's our target type. We're this is a local merge, so we're not deleting something, we're merging in, and what we're doing is we're reading the name of the control flow, and we're adding Jamie Thompson's best practice naming, which is held in a separate BIML file over here, and we're leveraging that BIML file. So execute the transformer, run that. So you can now see it's doing 147 items within that package, or packages. And we can do the same for our data flow. If we come back to here now, hopefully we can build Ralph's packages and send them back to him. Okay, so let's have a look at one of these. So now we've got our prefixes, Jamie Thompson's best practice naming prefixes on all our control flow items here. So we can see a couple of SQL tasks, a DFT, which is a data flow. If we go into the data flow, we can see the OLE source, the CNT, and there's a raw file destination at the end. Okay, so there's a couple of things, that, like I said earlier, there's a couple of things coming out. One of them is the support of Azure Data Factory. So if you've got an on-premise solution that you want to start migrating to a hybrid cloud solution, or you want to migrate to a full cloud solution, you could start to automate that using BIML and Azure Data Factory. BIML Flex is like the ultimate BIML framework, if you like. So it's a full end-to-end data warehousing accelerator with options. So the options are, you could use a data vault pattern, you can use a purely dimensional modeling pattern. The thing that really captures me about BIML Flex is I can create my data warehouse end to end with BIML Flex, and then when it outgrows my on-premise solution, within a couple of clicks, I can upgrade it and migrate it to a SQL Azure data warehouse, which looks after all the distribution, all the partitioning, all the keying. So the problem I see a lot with data warehousing is the problem is scalability. On SMP architectures, there's always a problem with scalability. So if I can do a couple of clicks and take care of scalability with almost infinite elastic scalability of something like Azure SQL Data Warehouse, then that's something that I'm really interested in. This is a little bit of an animation of the documentation that comes. So this is, not sure if anyone's familiar with the data vault pattern. So this is some of the documentation that you get with BIML Flex. So it's quite an interactive visual, so you can see where all your data vault assets are. Here we've got a few resources. So these are all fellow BIML heroes. So Andy Leonard, Andy's fairly well known in the integration services sort of department. He's got a couple of excellent blogs there. He also runs a BIML Academy, and there is a Stairway to BIML series on SQL Server Central. We've got Catherine Williamson, Ben Weissman, and Marty Anderson. They've also got some excellent blogs. So here's some good material, but probably the best place to go is the top one, which is bimlscript.com. There's a load of tutorials. There's a load of videos, walkthroughs, there's a forum on there, there's blog posts. That's probably the first place to go if you're interested in learning a little bit more about BIML. We've got a few minutes left over. How are we looking for time? We've got about 10 minutes. That's quite good for me. So if anyone's got any questions, feel free to ask them now.
Do you think, performance-wise, the 2016 integration service is better than the past version?
I don't know. I haven't put any 2016 integration services into a full production load, so I don't know. Has anyone else, maybe if we put that out to the floor, has anyone actually used integration services 2016 in a production environment and seen any increase in performance over a previous version? Perhaps you could try it and let us all know.
CDC versus temporal tables in 2016. Is there any reason to use CDC over temporal tables, or is it very much a fortress scenario?
Temporal, they seem similar. And there are some good reasons why you would use one or the other. I don't know exactly off the top of my head, but so for temporal tables, you've got a different table version, so they're pretty much the same thing. I'm not sure when it comes to quite how the temporal tables work with the logs, or not how they actually are driven.
Real-time updates based on what's inserted into your source table.
Yeah, I have read an article. I don't quite remember what the answer was, but the articles, basically the outline of it was they are still two valid things, but for slightly different purposes. Yeah.
Some of the BIML flex has got an end-to-end for your complete data warehouse. Would they go right up to, like say, a tabular model, that kind of thing?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Would you create your tabular model within BIML as well?
Yeah. So it's end-to-end. So you can go from your metadata mapping, so you can then create your persistent staging area, your raw data, your raw vault, your business vault, and then your info marts downstream of that, which is sort of data marts and data vault speak, and then your cubes, either tabular model or multi-dimensional model, and you can mix and match, how you want that to go. So that your raw vault, business vault, and info marts could be in a SQL Azure database or in Redshift or something else, but you could also then have your cubes if you want, analysis services cubes as well. Yeah.
Do you need the paid products, the BIML online, the BIML Studio rather than using the free tools?
So the question was, do we need the paid version?
Can you give us an idea of what it gives you that you can't do with the free tools?
Okay, so the tables, so we can't create tables in Visual Studio. The offline schemas that I showed you before. There's also about the coding and the IntelliSense and the expanded BIML, so the whole experience is different. So the paid version costs $4,000 US. Now some people will think, oh, that's quite expensive, but I've seriously worked on projects where I've saved $4,000 US twice in a day by being able to use the full version of Mist. Now I've recently picked up a client whose there was one of the employees who had recently left, but he had left some BIML automation using Bids Helper behind, and to be honest, he had just cut and paste BIML from forums and reading up online, and it worked pretty well. He was able to automate quite a bit of the sort of source to staging bit, at least of their load, using pretty much cut and paste with the free version. So it's not absolutely necessary, but if you want to take it to that next level, and we saw with the transformers, they are enterprise only or the paid version only. So for a consultant, the transformers are really important. If you're doing something at work, then you might be able to get away with the BIML Express or BIDS Helper. You'll certainly be able to get started with it.
How are you unit testing SSIS?
I can't explain that to you in a sentence or less, but there's a really good video by a guy called Reeves Smith on unit testing with BIML for SSIS. So it's a little bit more involved than I can explain to you in the next 2 minutes. Sorry.
Components, things like task factory, pragmatic.
Yep. Yes.
Compatible with
Yep. So actually CDC originally was a custom component written by, someone help me out here? Attunity. Yeah. They were originally a custom component, and in earlier versions, actually if you looked at the code behind it, they all had Attunity written all over. So yes, you can use custom components. So Cozy Rock, Theobald adapters for SAP integration. You can BIMLerize. Yeah.
in the demo, you did reverse engineer of SSIS packages into BIML. Can you use that? Can you do that in the free?
No, you can't. But, so the question was, can I reverse engineer in the BIML Express or BIDS Helper, the free versions of BIML? The answer is no, you can't. But there is a bit of a cheeky way of getting around that. If you use BIML Online, you can reverse engineer your packages. So you can import a package into BIML Online and get all the BIML, and then transport that into BIML Express or to BIDS Helper. And that's because that really gets you going, because it's the learning and finding out all the bits about the BIML. If you can import the BIML and then wrap some C# nuggets around it and automate it, that's a much quicker way and a much easier way, because you don't have to, code the BIML stuff. You get that BIML generated for you.
Based on that answer, is it easier to upgrade a BIML file from different SQL version?
Yes. So what I didn't show you is in the properties of my BIML Studio solution, I can select Integration Services 2005, 2008, 2012. So I can select my particular output that I want, and the same for my analysis services as well. I can select the version I want to output. So when I was converting Ralph Kimball's Integration Services packages, I could have done one for 2012, one for 2014, and one for 2016 by just selecting a different drop-down.
To expand on that further, can you regress versions if there's no future components in the later version?
You could take a 2016 and output it as 2012, but not only to 2005, only to 05. It doesn't do it doesn't do DTS, Data Transformation Service. Yeah. Okay, folks, one last thing before we go. We've got 2 minutes left. Please remember to fill out the evaluation. You not only helps feedback and so on, but you get a chance to win an Xbox and a Surface Pro. That's quite good. Okay, thanks for coming along. Thanks for asking lots of great questions. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and if you want to talk BIML, come and grab me later on or any time. If I haven't got a beer in my hand, bring beer. Thank you.